Okay, so today is all about the CMA report. So the 2 sessions ago, we talked about where to find sellers and setting the appointment and the pre-listing package. The next session, which was yesterday, we talked about the listing presentation and winning the listing. Today, we're going to go over how to do a CMA report. So I've logged in the berries, which I've showed you guys how to do before. So I'm not going to show you guys how to re-log in the berries. And I have picked an address to do a CMA on. So here's the address. We're doing 212 Regency. And I always like to start my CMA, unless I've recently been at the property. I always look it up. And I like to look it up on the MLS first before I go to another method if I can't find it on the MLS, because the MLS has photos and pictures, and that way we can see it. So I'm going to hit 212 Regency in this top search bar. If you don't have this top search bar, you can turn it on under your preferences. And then I'm just going to hit enter, which is going to pull up all of the listings that have the address of 212 Regency, which there are 7. And then there's a couple in Santa Rosa, El Sobrante, and then 3 in Vacaville. So this 3 in Vacaville is the one I'm looking for. And I'm just going to go to the most recent sale, which was 2020. So then I'm going to open that up. Well, it was withdrawn and canceled, but most recent listing. So we're just going to pull that up. Here is the property, and there's 44 pictures. So this is going to give me a pretty good idea. Number one, now I've got the square footage of the property. I've got the lot size of the property, the bedroom and bathroom count, and then also I can scroll through the pictures. So right in our listing presentation or a pre-listing presentation, we talked about asking them if they had done any updates or upgrades to the home since they've owned it. This is why we do that, because we can look up the old listing and see what it was. And then when they can be like, no, we haven't hardly done anything to it. Then we know that it's in the, it's a couple of years ago. So it's probably in similar condition as it was when it was listed last time. There might be a little bit of wear and tear, but it gives us a pretty good idea of like what the kitchen looks like and the cabinets and the appliances, right? So it's a pretty nice kitchen. Oh, it's got really cute backsplash. If, we didn't have, you've got the yard pictures in here. So, right. So you're like, oh, it's a cute little yard. So if we hadn't gotten anything from the sellers on this one or been able to see the property, then we have a pretty good idea. Also, you always want to look at the front of the house. You're like, oh, it's a cute property. And now we know, oh, it's single story. So this gives me an idea of the property itself, the size, the lot size, and the condition of the property. So now I want to pull comps for this property for my CMA report. So if on your berry screen in the gray toolbar at the top, there's this little button that looks like a square with an arrow shooting out of it. If I click on that button, it's going to open up a second berries window. It's the only way to open a second berries window without getting kicked out. Just so you know, if I went in and logged back into berries, it would log me out of that first screen. But now I can toggle between the subject property that we're looking at and the new berries window. So when I go to do the CMA report, just so you guys know, I'm actually going to close. I'm only working off one screen this afternoon, so I'm not looking at the chat box. So if you have questions, you're going to have to unmute yourself and ask a question. I'm also going to close that. All right, I go into searches. I always do my CMA searches on the interactive map search. And the reason I do that is because I want to look at the specific neighborhood for which the property belongs. And this is the easiest way to do that. You can do like a radius search and stuff, but then it crosses over main streets. It crosses in the different neighborhoods. This is why it's beneficial to know the area in which you're listing properties. But even when I don't know the area, it's pretty easy to guess. Like if I was looking at the map here, I could guess that, oh, see these main streets, that's probably a pretty good indicator of the neighborhood. Whereas if I looked at the main streets here in this section of Vacaville, that wouldn't be a good indicator but there's this break in the neighborhood. See how there's this natural break. I would know that, oh, I should probably cut the line there. So to find the right neighborhood. So if I didn't know the neighborhood, it's usually pretty easy to guesstimate on the map. But I want to center in on the listing that I'm trying to run comps on, our Regency. There we go. So it's going to zoom in there. I'm not going to remove the marker. I want to leave the marker. So I'm just going to hit the little X in the upper right-hand corner to close that box, which closes the box, but leaves the marker. And then I'm going to zoom out so I can get a pretty good idea of that neighborhood. Oops, too far. I got click happy there for a minute. This is my life. All right. So this is in the Regency School neighborhood or Regency Park neighborhood. And I know that what's over in this side of the neighborhood is different than what's over on this side, right? If we're just looking at Main Street. So I wouldn't want to pull over that Stonegate neighborhood while looking at Regency. And these properties across the street also are a little different because they're like funny shaped and they're pink and peach. Anyways,
That is true.
it's true. Some of them are getting painted. They're cleaning up, but they're just weird looking properties. I don't know. They look like they were built in like the late 60s, early 70s, and they weren't. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to hit draw. And then I'm going to select this triangle tool with the circles on it, which is going to allow me to pinpoint my neighborhood. So I'm just going to click on that. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click on that tree. I'm going to start just with the specific neighborhood. These Boone properties are a little different. We're going to come over here and then come up. So this is the area of very similar properties. If I don't get enough comps inside of the specific neighborhood, then I may move outside of that neighborhood. Ultimately, this Woodstock neighborhood is probably a decent comp. These homes are a little older than this neighborhood, but they're probably closer than going this way, only because a lot of these homes here are bigger homes. So, but we'll start there. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to search criteria. By the way, I fixed my search criteria, so it's not pulling up mobile homes anymore as my default search. Thank you. We want residential. I am going to select property type, single family, in case we cross over any lines, because there are a couple areas in there that do have some condos. So I want to make sure we just pull up single family residences. My statuses that I'm looking for, I want active properties because I want to know what the competition is. I want to know what's in contract because I want to know what's working in that neighborhood. And I want the closed properties, and I usually start with about 3 months. So we're into the beginning of May now. So I want April, March, and February. Oops, wrong way. So I'm just going to go February 1st to see what comes up. As you can see, there's not a ton of properties, but that's what we're going to start with. I'm not going to limit yet on bedrooms, bathrooms, living area, or lot size. I don't have to worry about city or county when doing the interactive map because it's only pulling what's inside that bubble. So I don't have to worry about any of that. So I just want to see what we've got so far, and then we'll go from there. Ultimately, what you're looking for when you're doing a CMA report is we are looking for at least 3 sold comps, and we like a couple of active properties when we're talking about a listing. So now I'm going to toggle. I close the search criteria just by hitting the search criteria button. So you can hit close and it goes away. And then I'm going to come over here to display, and I'm going to go to one line grid just because it's a little easier to look at. I can look at these, but I have to click on each one to pull it up. And then I got to click a second time to get more details. So I'm going to switch over to the one line grid now, which is going to take and show me any of the properties that you could see on my window. Okay, so if I zoomed in and something went off the window, it's not going to pull it up. So here are the comps for that neighborhood that we're looking at. We've got 2 contingent properties. Oh, Brittany has a question. Go, Brittany.
Hello. So you said you want 3 sold comps, and what did you say after that? And what?
For a listing, I'm looking for the sold comps, and I also want some active properties just so I know what the competition looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So now I'm just going to click on the first one and see this one. It's about 1,300 square feet, which is close to the subject property. And in case I forgot what it is, I could toggle back and be like, yep, 1,275. That's pretty close. This lot size is a little bigger, but it also looks like it's a corner lot, and most of that yard's in the front yard potentially. Oh, no, it's not a corner lot. It just looks like it's just got weird position. It's got a huge front yard.
Yeah, it is I think it is on the corner.
Is it? It didn't quite look like it here, but maybe.
That's the brick of the fence for the street.
Okay.
the
Okay.
cinder block brick. But
That was-
it does have a good sized yard, but it does have a good sized front yard too.
Yeah. All right, so we're looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is nothing like the subject property. It still has the original blue carpet, the original gold features. Right, it's got the original kitchen with the tile countertops and you're like, this is a cool property, but man, somebody's gonna have to do a lot of work to get into this. The backyard is cute. It's got lots of grass. The patio cover looks like it's rotten and probably should have been pulled down before the listing happened. It does have a good sized yard though, which is uncommon in that neighborhood. And it is, oh, so it is the corner property there. So it corners Ulatis, which isn't super ideal. So that's gonna, right, so when you have a property that borders a main road, it's right on the entrance, it's always gonna have less value than the properties that are further in because it's got so much more traffic and noise. This one does have a bonus because it's got a larger lot size. It is weird though, they put that house at a diagonal, but anyways, it works for it. So there's that property. I skipped one because apparently it pulled up the second one first. So if we go back to Yale, this was the closed property. This one was listed at 550,000. It sold at 535,000. It's a much bigger property than the subject property that we're looking at. So it's not a fabulous comp. You usually kind of want to keep it within the square footage parameters. So if the home is 1275 square feet, we really want to look at it and say, okay, well, somebody who's buying a home that's, almost 1,300 square feet, is that the same buyer that's looking at a 1,900 square foot home? Probably not. It's also not the same buyer because it's got 2 bathrooms. It's not the same buyer that's looking at 1,100 square foot, 1 bathroom house either. So we want to kind of keep that in mind, who's shopping for this property, and that's kind of defines our comps. And even though this one's bigger, obviously it's dead and the front yard, and it's got the cheap laminate floors on the inside and tile. They did try to update some fixtures. It's got the original kitchen with those beautiful tile countertops. So, right, so we're taking this all into account. Oh, look, there's that wonderful blue carpet that we were looking for.
You said to keep it within how many square feet, up or down, when you're running the CMA?
So general rule of thumb, it has no backyard. General rule of thumb is like 300 square feet up or down. But if we went down 300 square feet from here, that would put us at 1,000 square feet. And that's not a good comp. 1,000 square foot to a 1,300 square foot property are 2 very different buyers. Versus, but looking at 1,300 and going to like this one's 1,900, so that's like 600 square feet difference. That's a pretty big difference as well. So it's probably different buyers looking at this property.
And then as far as when you do like the square footage, it's for it to be a comp, I've heard that it shouldn't matter whether it's a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom as long as it's within the square footage. Is that correct when we're doing comps?
General rule of thumb is, if you're looking at comps, 3 to 4 bedrooms, not a big deal. Now, if it's a 4-bedroom home you're trying to comp out, I do try to look for 4-bedroom homes. Only because like somebody who's looking for a 4-bedroom home may not be looking for a 3-bedroom home. So if I'm comping out like for a listing that's got 4 bedrooms versus 3, but if like this one's got 3 bedrooms, so I'm not worried about including a 4-bedroom home because those people are going to be looking at both properties anyways, if that makes sense.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
As far as the appraisal goes, generally speaking, an appraiser, it's either going to add value to bedrooms or value to square footage, but not both. So you're either going to gain the value because it's got the square footage, or you're going to gain the value because it's 4 bedrooms versus 3. So, but they're not going to give you value for square footage and value for bedroom.
So say like this one, you said typically within the last 3 months is what you start at. And if you don't find anything, you go out a little bit more. So like this one doesn't really have any comps. So in that case, like if you were going to give the appraiser like a binder with the comps, it would be fine to give them something like a 4-bedroom comp if there was no other comps in that area for 3 bedrooms.
Oh,
that
yeah,
were Similar
absolutely.
in square footage. Okay.
Yeah, as long as they're similar in square footage. But again, I wouldn't want to use a comp unless it really helped to justify my value. If I'm looking at a 3-bedroom home, I wouldn't want to go to a 2-bedroom home.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at like 3 to 4 bedrooms, it really doesn't matter. And same thing with bathrooms. Like if I've got 2 bathrooms, a 3rd bathroom doesn't truly add that much value to it. The appraiser is going to give it a little bit of value, but if we go from a 2-bathroom home to a 1-bathroom home, it's a completely different buyer.
And also if it's like a single story versus a 2-story.
I
Similar?
still look at those together as comps, but yeah, usually
Okay.
single stories are going to sell for a higher price because they're usually more desirable. You got more buyer, they're more rare as far as listings go, and you've got more buyers looking for single stories.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to back this up just to January. It's not my favorite to do that, only because I know that in Vacaville right now, the market that was in January is a lot different than the market that is today's market, right? We were still slower in January, whereas the market's kind of starting to pick up. And that didn't really help me in that neighborhood anyways, as far as sold properties go. So now what I'm going to do, and I did adjust the square footage to 1,200 to 1,600. Okay, and then I'm going to go back in there to the sold, and I'm going to change that back to February. And then I'm going to expand my radius. So there's a couple different ways. Number one, I could draw another circle over here on another neighborhood and pull those in and see what we've got over there. We could click on our little marker here, and that'll give us options that we could go out like a 1/4 mile or a 1/2 mile. Usually for comps, you don't want to go further than a 1/2 mile away from the property. There are specific instances where I do. So like I had a property over off Alamo Drive on the North Alamo side that backed the open space. So looking at properties just in that area, it was hard to find other comps that were similar in size, and the lot size was like a 1/4 of an acre, and it backed open space. So I did go further away to find other comps that have sold in Vacaville that backed open space with that size lot that I used for justification during the appraisal process and during the pricing process. But generally speaking, as a general rule of thumb, in the city, track homes, you don't want to go further than a 1/2 mile. And I usually start with a 1/4 mile, because if we look at the 1/2 mile, that took us like way into lots of different neighborhoods. It does give me an idea though that I'm not going to find anything over here in this Woodstock neighborhood that sold, that I'm going to have to go over here. But this, you know what, this Syracuse section up here, this section of that may not be that off. So let's take a peek. You've got, oh, that one's an attached home. These are both going to be attached homes. We don't like attached homes. So this property, you know, every time I do this for people, it becomes a really complicated situation, just for the record. I thought, oh, I'll pick this one. It's a nice in-town property. It should be really easy, but no. All right, to eliminate that circle, I just went in here to next to draw and hit edit. It popped up what was there. It had polygon and circle, and I just hit the X on the circle to make it go away. Let's look over here. I may have to, you know what? All right, let's pull in this neighborhood. We don't want the old people homes over there on Boardwalk. Let's pull in this one. And let's pull in, we're going to have to change up our square footage. We're going to hit draw over here. And we're going to pull in this neighborhood. And I did select single family residences because over in this neighborhood, there are some condos. Actually, there's some townhomes, and we don't want those. So let's do that with my current parameters that didn't add any additional dots to my map, which makes me sad and want to cry. So I have 2 options. Number one, I could go back to that January time slot. Again, that doesn't make me super happy and didn't add anything because the market was different. And then we could come in here and take off our square footage parameters. And maybe we bump the square footage up to like 1,900. Let's see what that gives us. No. All right. Now, keep in mind too, that when you have like the smallest home in the neighborhood, it always brings the value up, right? The biggest home in the neighborhood, your value is going to be less than the middle of the road homes, and your smallest home is always going to be higher than the more expensive homes as far as like price per square foot, which why price per square foot isn't an accurate depiction. But let's look at what we have here in these neighborhoods. So now that I've got those, I'm going to go back into displays. So I was just double checking and looking at what I had. I'm going to go ahead just for kicks, and add this section here. Just to see what we got. All right. So again, it's going to, anytime I draw a box, it's going to show me what's in the box. If I zoom in, and now there's stuff that was in the boxes that's no longer showing on my screen. When I go to displays, it's not going to pull up those properties. So we want to be able to see the boxes. We're going to hit display. Now, because I left it open on square footage, when I come in here to look at the properties, when you go into one line grid, you've got lots of options in here. You've got the berries one line, not to be confused with the one line grid. But when you go with the one line grid, it opens it up like an Excel spreadsheet, which means I can come over here and click on square footage, and it'll sort these properties from smallest to largest based on square footage. Okay. So here was that Mills Road, which is original. Here was that Regency Circle one that we looked at. Oh, I actually don't think we pulled that one up. I didn't go all the way to number 3. So let's look at that one real quick, because that one was in the same neighborhood, very similar on square footage. It's got a beautiful purple door. This one does have some nice updates to it, and this one was listed at $539. It was listed for 7 days. This one's probably worth calling the listing agent on, who is Kelly Thornhill, and saying, hey, Kelly, I just wanted to double check with you. Your property that over there on Regency Circle, did you have multiple offers? She's probably gonna be like, yeah, we did. And you'd be like, I've got a listing getting ready to come on. Do you mind sharing with me what you're in contract for and when you're anticipating closing on that property? Because it went into contract just a couple days ago, 5/2. So it's probably going to close by the end of the month. It does have beautiful pink tile in the kitchen. So this one's pretty similar in style and updates, except the kitchen is ugly, but we won't point that out. It's got stainless steel appliances. The kitchen's been updated. It's got updated lighting throughout the property. It's got some little cute touches, little shelf above the washer and dryer. You can see that the bathroom's been updated at some point. Master bathroom's been updated. You go into the backyard. The only bummer about the backyard is it's a cement jungle out there, which does turn some buyers off. Because where's your dog gonna poo? That's my question. In the flower bed. There you go. All right, so you've got that there. So this is a pretty good comp for the property. So I would want to know, because it's in the same area, same bedroom, bathroom count, very similar square footage. I would want to know what this property is in contract for and what they're anticipating closing at, so that we could make a good guess on it. Okay. All right, we're gonna go back to list now. So on that one,
I think on that one, it says like June 16th or something like that. Like they would want a longer escrow.
Longer escrow, I did see that. All right. So we've got Mills, and see, I'm checking these boxes for the ones that I like, because when I go back to the map, it'll show those on there with those boxes checked, or I can go from here into the CMA report that we're gonna pull. This one on Syracuse, both of these were attached single family residences, so they're not my favorite to use as comps. Nantucket is bigger. It's 1,800 square feet, listed at 579. So let's take a peek at that one. There's not a lot of properties that are on that similar square footage. This one has a very similar look on the front of the house. It's got some older furniture. The kitchen's more original with original appliances, those tile countertops and linoleum floors. It does have a pool, although it's an above ground pool, which doesn't add a whole ton of value. And it does look like maybe because there's not very, oh, I hit the back button. There's not very many pictures of this one. It does look like potentially, there we go. The whole backyard might be the pool. And it did go into contract pretty quickly. It should be closing soon, would be my guess. Just looking. So see, it says like days on market were 13 and it's pending. It went into contract, it went pending on 3/29. If you ever want to look at the property history, if you click on this little bar here in the corner, it'll show us that, hey, it went active on 3/16 and then it went from active to pending on 3/29. Okay, so you can always see what the history looked like there as well. So this one's not nearly as nice on the inside nor the backyard, although the front yard's really cute. Okay. No, it's not. All right. But because we are limited on comps on the same square footage, and that's the closest one, we're going to go ahead and check that one here. And then we're going to look for these closed sales. Look at these 4 closed sales. All right. Oh, there's one at, oh, that was that darn attached. Okay, we have Yale that closed at 535. That was 1900, and then Woodstock that was also 1900 that was listed at 627. Let's look at both of those properties. So we're gonna look at the closed one first because I still need some closed comps. Oh, this was that one that we looked at originally. That I didn't like because it was bigger, but we're kind of out of comps the right size. So this one, again, not as desirable because of all the updates that need done. It's amazing to me that the number of buyers these days that walk in the properties and they don't want to do anything. They watch all those home improvement shows on like HGTV and stuff, and they want like the final product. They don't want to do the actual work. So let's see if I can skip to the next one. Here's that one that was listed at 627. I was just scrolling before I get too excited about this one to make sure there wasn't a pool in the backyard, and there is not. So this one, although we're back in the 1900 square feet, but we kind of got to use it as a comp because again, there's nothing in that 1300 square foot range. So this one's nice. It's got carpet in the bedrooms. The bathrooms have been updated. The kitchen was updated at some point. Doesn't look
So
fabulous.
question.
Yeah.
So if there wasn't something that's more comparable, you wouldn't go out a mile or more to try to find something that's more like, I mean, would appraisers do that, or would they stay within this like closer proximity?
They're going to stay within the closer proximity. Rather than, and they may go back further. So if we went back, so see, okay, so I checked those listings. So now on my map, it's going to show up with those checked listings that were on there. So I could go back to search criteria. Let's take our living area back to like 1900. And just so you know, if I take my living area back to 1900, it's going to leave those ones that I checked on my map, even though they were bigger than 1900 square feet. And then we want, let's see here.
Because you know the homes on Elmira are similar in size, even I think they're maybe the same age, but or older. But I was just wondering,
like these
if they would
Edwin
use that. Yeah.
We might be able to. Okay, so right. So what else I'm going to do, obviously, is I'm gonna, because those are all similar in square footage. So yeah, let's pull those in. All right. So see, that gives us a lot more, because the other option is that we could go back in here. Let's just for kicks, let's go, hey, we want like 1600 square feet. Oh, good. That leaves us a lot more. And then we could always go back in there and be like, okay, well, let's take it back another month and see. Appraisers are probably going to go back further than out too far, but I'm also going to do that appraisal packet where I can hand pick the comps and then justify why I did it. Like, hey, this property, like there's just nothing else that is sold similar in square footage in the surrounding neighborhoods. To find something similar in square footage, you have to go to the attached homes, which aren't good comps. Or you have to go over to the neighborhood across from Elmira because, you know, this neighborhood's not a good comp in this neighborhood, right? So you can justify it that way. If we did like a half mile, it doesn't really add anything. So yeah, I mean, let's look at that neighborhood for closed comps because I really wasn't liking what I was finding anyways. So see, we just kind of start expanding just a little bit at a time to try to find things that are going to work for us. So here you've got one on Randall that's 565,000. Let's take a peek at that one. It's right in that same square footage range as the subject property. The front yard's not as nice. It's a little older than the subject property. It does have a nice updated kitchen. It's got popcorn ceilings. It does have updated bathrooms, which is nice. A nice covered patio, but no landscaping. So I would say this one's probably a decent comp. Whereas our subject property that we're looking at is probably going to go a little higher than this one. So this one went at 565. It closed on 310. So that's a good comp to use. So we've got Randall, our good buddy Randall, because we're looking for closed comps. Let's see what else we've got here. See, this one on Christine is only like 1,000 square feet. So I probably wouldn't look at that one too closely. You've got contingent. We've got these pending one on Nantucket, and then we've got the Syracuse that I already looked at. Oh, let's take a peek at this contingent one that's on Richard Place. The reason I like contingent or pending properties when I'm trying to price a listing is that the ones that are that have sold went into contract at least a month ago, if not 2 or 3 months ago. And if you've got a market that's rapidly changing, such as the current market, what went into contract back in January that sold in February or March might be different than what's going on now in the market. So this one is contingent. It was on the market for 28 days on Richard Place. This is another one. This is Brandy's property. This is another one that I would be interested to call the listing agent to find out if they would be willing to share with you what it's in contract for. And when they anticipate it closing, to see if this would be a good comp for you to utilize. This one's nice because it's got a very similar backyard as far as it's got landscaping, it's got some grass, it's got an overhang. The inside of the property's got some nice updates to it. The bathrooms were updated. The kitchen was updated. Although I'm just not a fan of these cabinets. I do like the pantry cabinets though. But it doesn't matter whether I'm a fan of the cabinets or not. It's got a fireplace, right? So this is a good comp. It's a little smaller than the subject property, just by like 1,500 square feet. So still similar. So this would be another one that I would want to call and ask about to see if, when it was going to close, if this would count as a comp, if we put ours in contract to use as a comparable sale, if it was going to be closed in time. So we're going to check that one. There's no exact science to comps, just so everybody's aware of that. It's kind of, you just kind of got to pick and choose and look at what's out there. I don't know why sorting it by square footage caused it to space out so far, but let's look here.
Amy, I have a question about like how the process works. So you'd run the comps for them, but like when does the appraiser come in, and like what if what you got as a comp is like way off than what the appraiser thinks the property is worth? Like what happens then?
Yeah, so the comps come into play with pricing the property because you want to price it appropriately. Ideally, you want to price it in a position where it's going to draw in multiple offers and drive the price higher. So you don't want it sitting on the market. So that's where the comps come into play, as well as we're taking a guess at what the appraiser is going to come in at. So once we get the property listed, the property goes into contract. And then the lender is now involved in the process, the buyer's lender. The buyer's lender is going to order that appraisal. So it usually happens in that first week to week and a half of once you're into contract on the property. And the appraiser is really going to look at what has closed, what those closed sales indicate as a value for the property. And it's going to compare them against our properties that, our property versus the comparables and add and subtract value for features and updates and sizes and such. And if the appraiser comes in below contract price and there's an appraisal contingency in place on the contract, then what's going to happen is the lender is going to loan the money for the purchase of the home, either based on the purchase price or the appraised value, whichever is lower. So if we had a property in contract at $550,000 and it appraised at $500,000, and we were financing 90% of the purchase price, that 90% is going to be based on the appraised value at 500, not on the contract price at 550. So now our buyer is going to come back and try to renegotiate the purchase price based on that appraised value.
Yeah.
As long as they have that appraisal contingency in place. And if we don't negotiate with them on this, then they're probably going to cancel on it, or we might reach some middle ground. Like if there's a multiple offer situation and, it was hard to get the buyers in the contract, the buyers may have extra money and they may say, hey, like we can't pay $550, but we're willing to pay $510. Like we'll come up $10,000, and the buyers have to come in with that additional cash. Because again, the lender's going to lend based on 500,000. So they would have to come in with the additional money over that appraised value. So in a seller's market, it's not uncommon to see that over the last couple of years. Well, the last like 5 years, really. That's kind of been what's happened. Like people are coming in over appraised value. They're making guarantees over appraised value. So they're saying, hey, we're offering 550 and we're willing to move forward with an appraisal, 10,000 over the appraised. If the appraisal comes in low, we're willing to come in 10,000 over appraised value, not to exceed contract price, right? So they've been making those guarantees. Now in the last year, it's shifted where people aren't doing that as much, and we're asking for closing cost credits and doing things a little different, but it's starting to shift again, especially if you're down in like the Bay Area. You're seeing multiple offers come in. Most of Anastasia's offers that she's written down there in the Bay Area, East Bay, in that area, have all had 8 to 20 offers on a property.
Wow.
So it's a fairly competitive market, and we're starting to see that again here, that properties are starting to move faster. They're going with multiple offers. So we'll start seeing things getting a little different as the market shifts. Now,
that's why it would be good to have the appraisal contingency in case that does happen, where it kind of comes back lower than what the comps, or like what the purchase price was set at or whatever.
What the purchase price, especially if you anticipate that it's not going to come in at what you're offering.
Okay.
It's always a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
Now that being said, as a listing agent too, if the appraisal was a FHA or a VA appraisal, that appraisal is going to stick with the property. So if I had an offer at 550, it came in at 500,000, and my seller doesn't want to negotiate down to 500, and those buyers are going to walk, and they were an FHA buyer. If we put it back in the contract with a new buyer which is an FHA buyer, they're going to pull a copy of that appraisal. I don't get a new appraisal. So that's something to consider as we're making a decision trying to negotiate based on this price.
So then would the listing agent then try to take a conventional offer versus the FHA, knowing that another appraisal will get ordered?
Yes, you could go VA or you could go conventional.
Oh, so
that
you're saying if a totally another VA FHA person comes in, they're going to stick with that same appraisal, even though it's okay.
They are.
Okay.
So listing agents, so if that has happened, or if that happens, then the seller the seller's agent can choose to only then go with conventional? Or you wouldn't say it out loud, you would just choose if you got another offer to go with conventional, correct?
You could say it out loud, absolutely.
Okay.
So yeah,
I didn't know that. I didn't.
if you had an FHA in contract and the appraisal came in low and your seller didn't want to negotiate, then you could cancel that contract, put it back on the market, and you could go with either a VA or a conventional purchase at that point. And that FHA appraisal wouldn't come into play. And if it originally it was a VA buyer and the VA came in low, then you wouldn't want to go with another VA loan. You'd want to go with conventional.
Or could you like contest the appraisal or the appraiser? Sorry.
You could. So if the appraisal came in low, the seller always has the option to dispute the appraisal if there's grounds to dispute it. Now, keep in mind that appraisers are professionals and they don't like to admit that they're wrong. So it's really hard to get an appraiser to adjust a value on a home, which is why I go into it ahead of time, and I will do a training on it in June of my appraisal packet that I do, where I plug in the comps and I handpick comps for the property. I list all the features and benefits of the property, and then I justify why I chose those comps. And I would never hesitate to like shy away from a comp that was low so that I could justify why that wouldn't be a good comp for this property. And then I take those and I give it to the appraiser at the time of appraisal to help them get the value that I want for the property.
Yeah,
So you're
because you like.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brittany. Go ahead, Brittany.
So I didn't know that you're giving the appraiser your comps. I did not know that was part of the process. So
I do. As a listing agent, I generally always present the appraiser with a packet of information on the property. It has the features and upgrades of the property. It has my handpicked comps for the property. It has a copy of the contract in there because I did have an appraiser one time not get copies of the actual contract or the counter offers, and they appraised it based on what they thought was the purchase price, which was wrong. And appraisers generally won't appraise much higher than the contract price because it raises red flags with the lender. Well, if the appraiser appraised it for 560 and we were in contract at 540, why did they do that? Or why is the seller giving the buyer a deal? Is it really like something going on? So they generally will appraise it, even if the value is higher, pretty close to contract price. So you're either going to get like at contract or below.
Got it. So like for this one, like we were having a hard time finding comps and you were looking at the neighboring places. Since some of those ones were lower, or I mean higher, like in the 600s. And so we went out, across the way. Do you think that the appraisers would do the same or stick to the ones closest, even though they were like bigger homes?
So yeah, so
I see that's why you're going to give them your comps that you have pulled.
Yeah, so in my comp package, I'm going to include those much larger properties, but there aren't very many of them, but I am going to include them. I'm going to say, hey, this property is larger. It doesn't have very many updates. So I know I'm going to get dinged for the size of the property, but I'm hoping to gain value for the upgrades that were done. But right, I'm going to explain also, I do like a little synopsis that, hey, this property, like, there's not very many sales in the last 3 to 6 months in that neighborhood. And so I had to go out further in order to find similar sized properties to justify as comps. Right? So I'm going to justify that in my appraisal package. Make sense?
Yeah. So would you still keep that? I think you had like Woodstock on there.
I would.
You keep that one or no?
I would. Because so I kept this one on Woodstock that was at 627. I would keep it because it's one of the closest comps. Well, and it hasn't closed yet. See, I really would want it to close. And that's my problem. Like this one on Christina's closed, so I would keep that one even though it's a little bigger. I'm hoping that this one's going to close soon. So I'm probably going to have a conversation with George. He's part of our office to find out when he anticipates it closing. I think they just opened escrow on that one. Yeah. I was like, I just saw that one come across my computer. So I'm going to ask him when he expects it to close and what he went in a contract for to find out kind of where that value range is. Chances are I think that one went pretty, oh yeah, 6 days on market. Chances are that one probably had multiple offers on it. So it's
Yeah,
probably.
I
contract
talked to
higher.
him yesterday and he said, oh yeah, that one went quick,
Yeah,
is what he
right.
said.
And that's why I always want those like contingent properties or the active properties to see kind of what's moving, because this one here that closed, let's see, Randall closed. It closed in March, so it went into contract in February, and the market's picked up since then. And even that one went with over asking, right? So, and our property is very similar to this one that we're looking at, except our upgrades, I feel like it's a little nicer. This one looks like it still has popcorn ceilings. It doesn't have the landscaped front yard. It doesn't have the landscaped backyard. It does have updates on the inside, but it's also, the neighborhood's not quite as nice over there. It's older homes. So if I was using this one as the closest closed comp to the subject property, I would say that we could at least get this amount, and we could probably get more because the landscaping is much nicer and the neighborhood is nicer, where Regency is versus where Randall is.
So seeing since some of the pricing has gone up, would you recommend to your sellers then, like, hey, these are in contract for this, maybe if they're going to close, 15 to 30 days from now, maybe we list after so that you have that higher comp?
Yeah, we list close. I would want to make some phone calls to some of these agents, like on the Mills Road one, on the Regency Circle one, on, let's see, the Nantucket one. I might call that one as well. So any of these that are contingent, before I go meet with my sellers, I'm going to have a conversation with those agents to see if they'll tell me what they're in contract for and when they're anticipating closing, so that I kind of know what those comps are going to look like and when they should magically appear. Because my guess is these are going to draw that market higher. And the Richard Place. Right? This Richard Place one's a great comp for this property. So
yeah, it's like the closest square footage, huh?
Yeah, and it's got the most updates. It's the prettiest out of all of them. So yeah, absolutely. Like that one, I'm going to kind of lean towards. And again, this one on Randall that closed is a good one. But again, we've got better stuff with the property. So I think ours could go higher than that.
I know Brandy had said that one went for 10,000 over her original ask price because they did lower that price. And she said they got 10K over list price, original list price.
So let's see.
So like, let's say they were at that 610 list price. So I guess it would be good to know if she found out whether it appraised at 610, right?
Yeah, it'd be nice
That's
to
what they're
know whether it
contracted?
appraised. Yeah, so when I called Brandy up and I'm like, hey, Brandy, I saw you have a listing over on 113 Richard that's contingent. I just wanted to check in. When do you anticipate that closing? And she's going to be like, oh, it should close before the end of May. And you're going to be like, great. And then I see it was listed at 589. Do you mind sharing with me what it went into contract for? And if she's like, oh, it went into contract at 600 or 610, whatever that number is, be like, great. And has the appraisal been completed yet? Right? And she's gonna be like, yes, it appraised, or no, we're still waiting for the appraisal to come in. And you'd be like, great, do you know when you expect that? I'm gonna make a little note. I'm gonna call her back once she expects that appraisal in. Okay. Now, okay, so now once I've selected what I think are gonna be the comps. So I've got those all selected, and you can either do this from this one line grid page, or you can do it from the map. And if you want to toggle back to the map, we just come over here to one line grid and we hit map view all listings. It's going to pull those back up and give us our check boxes. See, they're all checked. From here, once we check the properties we like, we're going to hit CMA report. Okay, I like the cloud CMA, so I'm going to click here for cloud CMA. And just so you know, if you ever went looking for a property and it wasn't previously listed, then I would go to the tax and title records to get the details on the property. So I'm gonna just put a test client number 223. That's where you put your client's names. Private notes won't show, but the client's names will. So make sure you name them appropriately. You're gonna put in the client address or the property address here. That is the comp. It's gonna hopefully auto-populate that information for you so you don't have to do it. And then down here, it allows you to pull over, here's the MLS numbers for the listings that I had checked, or I could do quick and dirty and just find listings near the subject property. So this is where I want to pull in the ones that I hand selected, and I'm going to hit fetch listings. Okay, generally speaking, when I run a CMA report, I don't always put in a price here. And if I do, I'm going to put in a range. But because I haven't made those phone calls to the agents yet, I don't want it set in stone of what I'm going to recommend for this price. And if I hadn't seen the property yet, I may want to make it a little bigger range so that even though I saw the listing before, but if these owners like completely trash the property and I walk into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way we're getting what I thought we were for this property because it is destroyed. I don't want it on a piece of paper, what I was thinking, so that I have to tell them that there's no way we're going to get there. So oftentimes I don't include that set price there. Here's where you have the listings. You can exclude properties. So if I uncheck it, it's going to take that property out. If I check it, it's going to include it. I don't generally make notes and adjustments because I just let them kind of speak for themselves on a CMA report. I'm not an appraiser, so I don't know exactly what value they would add for an extra square footage or lot size or upgrades. I can guess, but I don't know for sure. So I just kind of leave those alone. You can select sort option. So you could sort it by days on market, list date, list price, manually, price, square footage, sold date, right? So right now it's sorting it by sold and then contingent and pendings. And then once you are happy with that, you hit customize report. And again, I want at least 3 closed sales. So I have something to go off of that's concrete. And then here's where you can customize the CMA. And I do recommend you can get here without going through Barry's. If you go through the Barry's homepage before you click on the Barry's Plus, down in that second box down, it's got all the tools that you have at your fingertips. You can click on Set Cloud CMA right there, and it'll take you to the Cloud CMA where you can spend some time really looking at this report and changing it up, because you can change your themes and your layouts and your templates and your fonts and whether you want to cover or no cover, and what you set becomes your default, which is handy. And then you can add and subtract pages. Now, keep in mind that if we go into this Power Pack or the Tom Ferry pages, those you have to upgrade from the free membership, but all these things in the standard are included. You can include them in your report, so that you've got all these things here that you can include in your comps, right? So keep in mind that if you include testimonials, then you probably should have some testimonials. Like if I clicked, oh, I want my ratings on Zillow, I clicked on it, so it's going to give me a preview of what that looks like. I haven't linked my Zillow account, so there's nothing on there. Okay, so anytime you click on something, it'll show you what that is. I usually try to keep my CMA reports. This is just explaining to you what the difference between a CMA and appraisal is. I usually try to keep my CMAs pretty simple. So I have a title page, and if I want to see if I hover over this, it gives me a little eyeball. I can click on it. It's going to show me the preview of what the title page looks like. Right? Pretty simple. And then I've got my map of all listings, the summary of comparable properties, listing details, and my first dozen photos on a page. Then I've got my comparable property statistics, suggested list price. If I had that, if I didn't, I would take that out because I don't have it. My online valuation analysis, I'm always going to pull that in. It talks about like the values that you see on Zillow and what that shows, and then what it was for the other comps that we had as well. The sold property analysis, that's usually kind of all that I include in my CMA, but there's lots of other things. You could include your resume, your recent sales company, what is a CMA, these ones that say chapter, it's just a blank page, like a title page for the listing chapter. So it's not super exciting. It just says listings. More photos if you did adjustments. Here's the analysis chapter, suggested list price, net price, net
So
sheet.
for
if
your
you did-
suggested list price, you said, since you didn't talk to the listing agents yet and you don't have an actual price, do you typically stay within a certain range, like no more than 20,000, no more than 30,000, or is that just dependent on where the other comps sat?
I wouldn't even include it in this one at this point until I had a chance to talk with those agents and actually visually see the property.
So you did, like, do you
Okay.
typically, and let's just say if you did on whatever CMA you did, is
Yep.
there a price range that you stick to? Like you won't do no more than 20,000, like 550 to 600, like that's a $50,000 range. Do you stick like within 20,000, within 10,000, or does it all depend?
It's on a property like this one, it would probably be like a $20,000 range. And right, and if I'd seen the property, I'd already talked to the other agents. I knew when those properties were closing. I kind of knew what our time frame looked like for going on the market, and that some of those other ones would be closed. And I felt fairly confident where I could get that property. Let's say I felt like, man, with that one on Richard Place closing, I really think I can get the value. I think we can get 600,000 for this one. Then I might say like, hey, it's 575 to 600. I might go like a 25,000 and like 575. We want to be comfortable. I think it'll draw multiple offers. I think it'll push it up pretty close to that number. And it's going to get the property moved fast. Whereas if we price it closer to 600,000, it may sit for just a little bit longer. It may weed out some buyers that potentially would have looked at it. So we might not have as much activity, although I think we can get there. But if my seller's bottom line was 600,000 or 590, and then I know that, okay, well, I want to list it at 600. So that way, if somebody asks for closing costs, we don't get multiple offers, something happens, like I still got that cushion there before their bottom line. And I think I can get there.
Yeah,
Does that make
gotcha.
sense?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like in general, for you, I know that this one you didn't have like all the
Yeah.
numbers, but for like other ones where you have solid closed comps.
Yeah,
Do you
probably
usually-
probably a range of 20 to 25,000 still.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. That's what I was wondering.
Probably that range of 20 to 25,000.
Because I've done some CMAs before where it was just like all over because what the market was like the last few years. And I
Yeah.
remember it was like anywhere from like 500,000 to 800,000. And it was like all over the place. So I was just wondering, like, is there like something that typically you stick to, like no more than when you're going to hand it over to in your listing presentation, don't exceed a certain amount of in between.
Yeah, and it just depends. So like if I've seen the property, I've talked to the agents that have the comps, I feel pretty good about the value, then it's probably going to be 20 to 25,000. If I haven't seen the property and I think
Gotcha.
there might be some, like I might go as much as like 40 or $50,000 spread. Like, hey, if you've got updates, we're like at 600, and if you've got no updates, we're probably closer to like 550. Right? Or if it's
Gotcha.
trashed on the inside, like here's like
Yeah.
upgraded and here's not.
Well, because, and the reason why I ask is like, because if you're doing a listing presentation and you give an amount, it's like before, I guess if you left it blank, if it was going to be like a $40,000 spread and you left it blank, I guess we can kind of then just gauge, your sellers and be like, what do you want to get out of this?
Yeah.
And then list it, I guess, that way.
Yeah. So I probably, for the most part, when I do a CMA report for like my pre-listing package, for the most
Yeah.
part, I don't include that, the price in there, like my value range or whatever, suggested list price. Most of the time I won't include that.
So then where do you go from there if it was a listing presentation of you wanting to list their home?
Yeah, so then once I sit down with them at the table, I've done the walkthrough of the property. I've given them the copy of the CMA, which had all the comps from a wide range, kind of like this one where we have like updated, not updated.
Yeah.
then I'm gonna say like, hey, here are the, I provided you that CMA, you said you looked through it, or that market analysis, you said you looked through it, and ultimately like your property, or where do you think your property falls with these 3 comps, right? Like you've got one that's not updated, one that's one that's really updated, and they're gonna be like, I think it falls closest to that one. You're like, I agree. And that one sold for 565. So I would probably recommend listing it somewhere between 550 and 565.
Got it. Okay.
So I'm going to determine that at the time of the listing presentation, after I've had a chance to walk through the property, if I haven't visually seen the property.
Got it. And see what they say too, so that you know whether they're going to be happy or not happy with whatever price you guys list.
Yeah, right. And I brought the reality to them of, here's the pictures of the comps. What do you think your property most matches? Yeah, me too, right? And because I did the pre-listing questionnaire and I asked them, what do you think your home will sell for? I kind of have an idea. What do you want your home to sell for? I kind of know where they think it should be. So I know whether I'm going to like completely disappoint them or whether they're going to be really excited. And if they're going to be really excited because they're like, man, I really think it's going to be like 540. And I go and look at it. I'm like, well, we can at least get 550 for it. Even if I think I can get like 565 for it, I might be like, so I know you guys were hoping for 540, but I really think we could list it at 550 and get it moved pretty quickly and potentially even bring in multiple offers. Does that sound good to you? And they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, yes, that sounds great. Right. And then I know that I've got it in the bank that, man, I know I can sell it for more and that we will pull multiple offers in on this one.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Once you've made your selections here and you add it just by like hitting the little minus button to take something out or the plus to add something in, you can always view it by just clicking on it. It'll give you that thing. And then we hit publish report. It's going to take us back to the home page. And then here it'll tell us once it's done, and then you can either email the report to them, you can get a PDF copy of it, or you can view it live, which is like a slideshow. But for some reason, just so everybody knows, the slideshow version includes lots of things that I don't like. So, but if we view the PDF, this is what that completed CMA looks like through Cloud CMA. There was that cover page. And then we have the map of comparable listings. So it shows us all the listings with numbers and where they were located and the subject property. And then it gives us those stats and then tells us whether they're sold or pending or active. Here we have, it breaks it down into the summary, the average price per square foot, the average price that's sold, average square feet, right? So you've got all that information in there. Then it does a little 4-up of comparable properties. So it does them side by side with the subject property that we're looking at. So you can see it side by side. And there's the rest of those. And again, if you wanted to include more pictures, like if I were showing up at the listing appointment, doing a walkthrough the first time I had seen the property, I might bring more pictures of the insides of those properties so that I could ask them which one they think their property most resembles. Here's the comparable property statistics, average days on market, average sales price, lowest sales price, and highest sales price and pending. So they have contingent and then pending. I like how they separate them out. This is that online valuation analysis. How accurate is a Zestimate, which right is Zillow. So this shows that, hey, these properties that sold, they sold at 554 and Zestimate said 552. And this one was 520. It said, right. So it was Zestimate was low on most of these properties. And on the Zestimate here versus the contingent ones, it shows that the Zestimate is showing higher, which doesn't surprise me because again, most of these I think probably went with multiple offers, which is going to drive that price higher. Okay, so I just like because it shows that comparison. So when they look at their Zestimate, they can be like, oh, yeah, we are pricing it a little lower than what the Zestimate says, or man, I'm way out of line because it shows the Zestimate is actually like, you know, wherever. So here's the sold property analysis. Shows that the average of their list price sold for 101.89% of list price on an average of days on the market. I just added this one in there to see what it would look like. This one I feel like was already kind of mentioned earlier. So it just is kind of restating this information here on the summary. And then I decided to include this on the average price per square foot. They're all over the place. It shows the sold price versus the square footage. and then shows you those square footage ranges here. And then that way you can kind of look at them. Like 7 was the biggest property. See how the bigger the property gets, oftentimes the lower the price per square footage is, which is why we generally don't price properties with the price per square footage. I'd probably take this one out. Or we could include a trend line. So that's kind of the CMA report. That's what I include. Again, I've got that pre-listing packet that also goes out. So most of my stuff, the resume and everything is going to be in that pre-listing packet in that presentation. I'm going to include the CMAs really just to get the comp information to them in a pretty digestible format. Any questions?
Nope.
Nope.
I don't think so. What price would you pick, Amy, though?
Okay, so without talking to those other agents on this one. Okay, so without talking to the other agents.
What would you price it at, Brittany?
I was thinking like 570. Or like 575. I don't know. I need to look in more
I was thinking
detail.
575 also.
You were?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Not too
I would
bad.
probably say listed at 575 because I ultimately think it's going to push it a little higher. Because especially if this Richard Place sells for closer to 600, and if this Randall went into contract for higher than that one sold at 565, but this one's a nicer property than that Randall is. So I think 575 is a safe number that you'll at least get that, if not push it a little higher on this one.
Oh my God, I got it right. Wow.
Yeah, good job.
Cool. Okay. Well, thanks. I learned a lot.
Good job. I did a good job then.
You did. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Log our
And
attendance.
Log our
you
attendance.
can-
I know. Last time we tried to log our attendance, Amy, you guys clicked out right away. I didn't get a chance to.
All right, Abby won't click out right away. You better click it right now. You got 3, 2. No, I'm joking. Log your attendance. It's in the chat box. You can click on it and log it. And I think it was Adriana that sent over the suggestion. I was going to say throw it in there.
Oh,
Hey,
what is it?
Maciel, when you log your attendance, can you do me a favor?
Yes.
Can you put in the suggested trainings?
Mm-hmm.
Can you put? Oh no, was it you that suggested a training earlier today?
I think you said you were gonna do one in June for something.
For the
And I already
appraisal,
forgot.
but somebody, it wasn't that one. Uh-oh, I probably lost it. Oh, it was Anastasia. Video tour do's and don'ts. Can you put that in the suggested training box so it shows up on my spreadsheet?
Yes.
Video tours, do's and don'ts. Fabulous. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a
Perfect. Thank
fabulous
you.
evening. What?
And I said thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Amy. Have a good weekend.
All right. See you all next week. Holler at me if you need anything before then.
Bye, guys.